People leave for environments with better communication. I've seen it time and time again in good organizations with good leaders. Things like time get lost. We spend months fixing problems that, guess what, clarity would have prevented. And the bottom line is things like money get lost. I watched a company burn $2 million on AI last year. Best tools on the market, enterprise licenses, custom integrations, world-class training programs. They did everything right on paper. 6 months later, adoption was at 23%. Productivity, it hadn't moved. And 3 of their best people, they have already walked out the door. Welcome, everybody, to the Leaders Leading Leaders podcast. I am your host, John Espinosa. I'm going to use my 20 years of leadership experience in building teams, talk about all my mistakes so you won't make the same ones. Whenever I was introduced to this company, the CEO, they brought me in, they sat me down, and they said, John, the technology isn't working. We need better tools. And I looked at him and said, the technology is fine. That's not your problem. He stared at me like I had 2 heads or something. Then what is the problem, he asks. Well, I told him, and this changed everything about how he approached AI and honestly, how he approached leadership. So here's the thing. The mistake that this CEO made, it's the same mistake that I see smart, well-intended leaders make everywhere right now, and it's costing them. It's costing them adoption, it's costing them trust, it's costing them their best people, and it has nothing to do with which AI tool that you are using, nothing to do with your budget, and absolutely nothing to do with your industry. So by the end of this episode, you'll know exactly what it is, and more importantly, how to make sure that you never make that same mistake. Let's get into it. So here's what we're covering. 3 ideas. They're going to transform how you lead any AI initiative or really any major change. So if you're talking or thinking right now, John, I don't have an AI initiative that I'm implementing. Well, this goes along. You can just substitute the word AI for any major change that you are making within your organization, your team, or your business. So the 3 things that we're going to cover. First, it's that clarity gap. Leaders skip the one thing that matters the most. And this is what actually costs us, okay? The second topic that I'm going to discuss is what your team needs to hear. And there's 4 questions here that you must answer before any rollout needs to occur. And then last, I'm always going to leave you a blueprint, a framework, and this time it's going to be that communication blueprint. How to lead AI change with clarity, and guess what? You're going to build trust along the way. So let's get into the first one. This is the clarity gap. And a lot of times, and it may be because we just communicate or think that we've communicated, or most of the time it's an assumption that we make as leaders. But we assume that excitement is contagious. And I've seen this a lot when things begin to roll out, when we're rolling out a new employee initiative, or we're rolling out a new marketing plan, or we're rolling out maybe a new strategic vision or direction. So a lot of times what occurs, if you're the single boss or a leader on a team, your team and you have been thinking about this rollout for months. But unfortunately, your team just heard about it yesterday. So they're not going to have the same amount of excitement that you have. Your enthusiasm doesn't automatically transfer, right? It's the context that does. So what feels obvious to us, sometimes it's going to feel sudden to them. The other point here that we need to understand is speed becomes the enemy of understanding. And this is, if you've been coached or you've heard our podcast for quite some time. Sometimes you have to go slow to go far, right? Because pressure to move fast leads to skipping those soft steps, aka communication. And we're going to explain as we go becomes, guess what? We never fully explained. So, this saying of we're changing the wheels as the car is going down the street, that never works out for anybody. And the other piece is efficiency without clarity. It's just going to lead to fast confusion. So when we overestimate really how much people know or think we know about a new rollout, a new initiative, we assume that they've read the memo. We assume that they've attended the meeting, right, that we've had. We assume that they're able to connect all the dots. In reality, people are overwhelmed. Our teams, they're going to miss 80% of corporate communications. Just think, when was the last time that you opened up one of those news blasts that went out, whether it was daily, whether it was weekly, or whether it was monthly? And then if you did open it, did you read every single piece of information in there? I know that's not true for me, so why are we expecting that of our teams? One announcement is not communication. It's just noise. And that noise we hear constantly. We're bombarded with newsletters, we're bombarded with emails, and we're trained to only take what we get out of it or what we interpret that to be. So the other thing here that we have to pay attention to is the assumption that good tech sells itself. If the tool is useful, people will adopt it, right? Wrong. People don't adopt tools, they adopt understanding. And what we're talking about here is without the why, even those great tools, it could be the latest and greatest tool that will help even, help our employees do their job better. It just feels like an imposition on them. So there's a cost associated with this clarity gap. And the cost could be things like trust. People assume that you're hiding something if you don't care about the impact to them. Things like adoption. Tools sit unused, and guess what? Those workarounds, they are going to multiply. Things like talent get lost. People leave. People leave for environments with better communication. I've seen it time and time again in good organizations with good leaders. Things like time get lost. We spend months fixing problems that, guess what, clarity would have prevented. And the bottom line is things like money get lost. Investments underperform because people, they're just not bought in. And worst of all, we lose culture. So cynicism begins to build. Again, here comes another initiative that they won't explain, or here comes the new flavor of the month or the year. These things cost us time, money, and resources. Some research here. The McKinsey Institute shows that 70% of change initiatives fail. And the number one predictor of that failure, you said it, poor communication. It's not poor strategy or technology here. ProSize change management data indicated that projects with effective communication, they're 6 times more likely to meet the objectives. So these things, they work. Remember that CEO that I mentioned at the top, the one who burned $2 million and blamed it on technology? Here's what I told him. I said, your tools are fine. Your communication isn't. His team had no idea why that the AI was being implemented. Nobody told them what the problem it solved. Nobody addressed what it meant for their roles. Nobody painted that picture of success that included them. Leadership announced the tools, they trained on the features, but they skipped the story. And in that silence, his team filled in the blanks themselves. They filled them in with fear, They filled them in with assumptions. They filled them in with those worst case scenarios. And most devastating, they filled them in with job searches. He didn't lose them because of the software. He lost them at the silence. And that's the number one reason AI rollouts fail. It's not the technology or any rollout. Again, substitute whatever you're getting ready to roll out for AI in this situation. It's the communication, or more specifically, it's the lack of it. Just a quick pause in our episode. This might be exactly what you need to hear. If you're currently leading a team, or you want to lead a team, and you're spending your days putting out fires, you're not failing, you're just stuck. Because when everything feels urgent, nothing actually improves. And over time, that starts to chip away at our confidence as a leader. I've led teams under pressure for years, and firefighting isn't about effort, it's about those missing leadership systems. When expectations are clear and ownership is real, our teams, they stop reacting and they start solving problems without us. So if you're ready to lead instead of react, click on the link below, book a call, check out our consulting programs. All right, back to the episode. So think about the last time you led a change, okay? AI or otherwise here. Did you spend time on the implementation communicating? If you had to guess, ask yourself, be honest here, what percentage of your team could articulate the why the change was happening? And if that number isn't above that 80%, we've got a clarity gap. So what does your team actually need to hear? There's 4 questions that you must answer before any rollout. So let's break them down. So the 4-question framework, every person facing any change, in this particular example, it's the AI change, right, is silently asking these 4 questions. And if we don't answer them as leaders and we don't do it clearly, they're going to answer them with fear. So question number 1, why is this happening? That's a pretty valid question, right? What do they need to know? What's behind this question? We need to let them know the honest reason behind the change. The real why, and I'm doing quotes because it's not the written why or whatever is being pushed down from the strategic level. I used to write those, so I get it. But that's not what needs to be communicated here. Connection to the bigger purpose, to the bigger strategy, or the problem being solved. That's what they need, okay? Acknowledgement of what wasn't working before. And when we don't do this, when we skip this particular question, people are going to assume the worst. They're going to make up their own stories. It could be, hey, they're cutting cost. They're going to replace me. Or leadership, they're incompetent. This will pass over, right? Without a compelling why, change, it just feels like it's arbitrary here. So here's an example of how you can answer this. I always want to give you some practical tips and tools. And right now, if you are still listening, thank you. Do me a favor, find that subscribe button, find the like button, click on it for me. It will help me out tremendously. Thank you for listening. Let's get back to the episode. So here, how do we answer this question? Well, it could simply be something like, we're implementing this because, state that problem, be specific as possible, or the opportunity here, right? Here's what we're trying to solve and why now is the right time. Again, I think we overthink these questions. Keep it simple. We don't have to overthink it. And if we're being honest and vulnerable and upfront and sharing the information that we can share, I'm not saying share everything, because I understand that there are some things that we might not be able to share in this example. So share the things that you can share. So question number 2 here. What does this mean for me, right? What's in it for me? What they need here is be direct. Be specific with the information about how their role is being impacted, okay? The other thing, what's changing? Like, what is staying the same and what is still unknown? Those 3 things. And then acknowledgement that their concerns are valid. I hear you. Sometimes those are the most important words in a lot of change management is I hear you. So when we skip this step, people fill in the blanks with the worst case scenarios. Anxiety, it skyrockets. And productivity, it drops. And the rumors, they're going to spread like wildfire. So here's an example of the way that I would answer this question. Here's what this means for your specific role. Here's what will change, and here's what won't. Here's what we're trying to figure out together. We're going to mutually design that path moving forward. So question number 3, was I considered? What they're asking here is for evidence. They're asking for evidence that leadership thought about the human impact. Some voice, their voice in the process, even if the decision is already made. What was that voice, right? And then any type of reassurance that we can give them that they weren't an afterthought. What occurs when we skip this question, answering it? People feel like they're just some pawn. They're not team members anymore. And then that resentment builds up. So even towards the good decisions that we're going to make in the future, every time that we come to them and they weren't considered, they feel they weren't considered, it's that resentment. Here we go again. Here goes John, not talking to anybody. He's just going to push out a decision, implement something that, is going to save us money. Here goes the stories. I'm sure you've heard this. If you've even been in any organization that's gone through major change, we call it the water cooler. Or, I like to get this out, and we're going to talk about ways to implement or ways to alleviate this. But in the end, here's a way to answer that question. Before we made the decision, we did consider the impact on you and the rest of the team. So here's how. And here's how you can still shape the remaining rollout of this implementation. Again, keep it simple. Share the information you can. Question number 4, what's going to happen next? What they need here is they need that clear timeline with milestones. So if you got a good project manager or a program manager, this is exactly where you're going to pull them in to get that Gantt chart, get that project chart. The other things they need to know is what support will be available, whether it's training, whether it's resources, or the time, because they still have their other jobs to do. They still have to work on their current system in order for that transition to occur. And then who to go to with questions and who to go to with concerns. So if we skip this, again, that ambiguity that is created, that void, it's going to breed anxiety. It's going to disengage our folks because they can't see that path forward. And even if we can't see it ourselves, here's a way to answer. Give them the timeline. Here's the timeline, team. Here's what's going to happen first. Here's what's going to happen next. Here's how we'll support you, and here's who you can talk to if you have any concerns. Now, it's not bulletproof, but a lot of times that's going to head off any ambiguity or any confusion that might be caused by this rollout. Okay? So some research here. Neuroscience research shows that our brains treat uncertainty as a threat. And this triggers that same stress response as physical danger. Now that's a big deal there. When we as leaders answer these 4 questions, the ones that we just talked about, it's going to reduce this amygdala activation. So that's the brain's fear center. And it will increase our prefrontal cortex engagement. So that's the rational thinking and buy-in. Now that is research and it's backed. So those 4 questions, whether it's AI adoption or you're looking to restructure the organization, put those 4 questions in your back pocket and make sure that you have answered them. So here's the application. What do I want you to think about? Before your next AI communication or any change communications, write out all the answers to those 4 questions. Read them out loud and then ask yourself, would this calm me down if I were on the receiving end? If not, you're going to keep refining until it does. So we're going to wrap this up and put this all together because I want to give you a complete blueprint, as we always do, for communicating AI change with clarity. So here we're going to lead AI change with clarity. How are we going to do that? The first thing, we're going to communicate before we implement. Don't wait until the tool is ready to start the conversation. Don't wait until it even is 80% ready. Start the conversation. Early communication signals that we respect, and it's going to reduce that initial shock, okay? So even if the details are incomplete here, acknowledge what's coming. Give them what you do know. Number 2, this is the 3-phase communication plan. And this communication plan I have used multiple times in all of my change management situations. We're going through a big change in one of our organizations right now. It's a small little restructure, but the things that need to occur, phase 1, the pre-announcement. This occurs somewhere around, 2 to 4 weeks. Just give it a little rough estimate in there, but this is before rollout. And the goal of this phase is, again, to build awareness. ADCAR, ProSci. Awareness, the very first thing. And in order to build awareness, we have to communicate. This is going to reduce that surprise. So a key message that you could use might look like something like this. Something is coming. And here's why, and this is how you're going to be involved. Keep it simple. Phase 2 of this communication plan. Rollout. We're going to roll out communication, and this occurs at the launch. So we're going to answer the 4 questions that we talked about earlier. Key message here. Here's the what, the why, the how, and the what it means for you. And then phase 3, ongoing dialogue. Now, ongoing dialogue, it's going to continue weeks, if not months after. This is going to address any emerging concerns. So I like to use those my one-on-one, weekly one-on-ones to address these concerns. We do it on a one-on-one environment. If it's big enough for the team, if I think it needs worthy to be put on the agenda of our team meeting, I'll go ahead and discuss it again there. And then a lot of times it'll get brought up. Somebody will say something. Somebody else will be like, yeah, I was thinking that, but maybe they didn't tell me. So it's a great way to continue that ongoing dialogue. What's working? Here's what we're adjusting, maybe, right? And then keep the feedback coming. Keep it coming. I'm all ears until we get through a point where we've stabilized after the change. They're going to keep it coming because you never know. There might be something that we overlooked as a leadership team or an implementation team at the beginning. A lot of times that's training. There's knowledge gaps that we didn't think about whenever we were rolling out. So it's important to have that ongoing dialogue. So the third thing here in our communication blueprint is going to be what I like to call multiple channel communication. And this is something that it depends on your organization. If you're a very small team, guess what? Just go over and have a conversation. So I'm not expecting those very small team organizations to have multiple channels of communication. But anytime you get above 6, 7 employees, email isn't going to be, it's just not enough. Okay. It gets lost. Going back to what I said earlier, if you don't have what you really need in the first 3 to 4 sentences of an email, a lot of times people aren't going to continue. The other piece that we may consider is maybe a town hall where we communicate, early. We use that phase 1 to get it all out, get the questions that they have, maybe not answer them in that session, but put them on an FAQ page, or a frequently asked questions page, or make them maybe smaller subgroup meetings. We can also do one-on-ones here, right? So these are things that we can do as a multi-channel communication. The more human the channel, the more the trust is going to build. Number 4, repetition isn't redundant. It's necessary. I've oftentimes told the goofy story here. A lot of times you'll hear 7 times. It takes 7 times, 7 to 10 times for people to hear the message before it actually sticks. And it seems like a lot, and you're going to get bored of saying it. But one of the things that I always encourage, just because you're bored of saying it, going back to your excitement because you said it so many times and you're dwindling now, doesn't mean that other people, it really hasn't sunk in yet. I don't know how many times I've been sitting in a meeting, and I know I've said 3, 4 times, put it in the minutes, and I'll repeat something and be like, oh, when did we talk about that? It was like the light bulb went off for some reason. Just all the synapses fired at once, and now it's the first time that they've heard that. That's okay, though, right? Don't get upset. Don't call them out and say, well, this is only the 5th time that I've mentioned this. That's not going to get you the respect that we're trying to earn. So don't assume that one announcement did the job. One email didn't do the job. One team meeting didn't do the job. One one-on-one, you're right, didn't do the job. So repeat the why more than you think is necessary. Number 5, we're going to create space for questions and pushback. More importantly, pushback. One-way communication, it's going to build resentment. However, if we build in that Q&A, the anonymous feedback channels, maybe even that open door policy, it will go a long way with hearing that pushback, and we can get ahead of that. All right? The goal isn't to eliminate resistance here. It's to hear it and then respond to it, even if the decision has been made and this is the way that we're going. Everybody knows where they stand, and now we can begin to get over it. Now we can begin to work on ways to figure out how are we going to get past this. Number 6, acknowledge the emotional reality here. Don't pretend that it's purely rational. People are going to have an emotional part of change, okay? Say it out loud. I know that this brings uncertainty, and that's normal. One of the organizations that I lead was going through a massive change when it came to policies and procedures. And what we knew as normal, it wasn't normal anymore. I didn't have all the answers. My leadership didn't have all the answers. But the only thing that brought comfort was acknowledging that we were in an uncertain time. And that uncertain time brought a lot of anxiety, brought a lot of unknown to the situation. So I have a saying, or I had a saying, I still say it, but my saying during that time was, I'm going to be where my feet are today. My feet are right here in front of my desk working on, whatever project, or I'm here talking to you, and that's where I'm at. We can't control all the rest. So validating feelings, it doesn't slow adoption. Through that process, it's going to accelerate it. And some people say, well, that's too slow. I don't have time for feelings. Well, I've seen it. I've seen where you get very rational in a situation. You avoid the emotional part and change stops. We spend a lot of money on these implementations. And if we can't get it adopted, we can't get an awareness, and we can't get people trained up and then accepting the change, it will fall flat. So here's a checklist. And this checklist, again, we'll provide it down in the notes, but this is one of the things, and I'm sharing this with you because it's very, very important. When we talk about rolling out communication, and again, AI, we're talking about AI here, but this can go to any change management. The first checklist item is, can you clearly articulate the why in 2 sentences? Can you get it down to a part where you can communicate that why? Have you prepared the specific answers about job impact? Remember, going back to those 4 questions. Do you have a timeline with key milestones? If you don't, that's where you're going to bring in somebody with that skill set, a project manager, or there's many other AI options out there that will allow you to break things down into usable chunks. I like 90-day frameworks. That's what I coach on. That's what I use in my everyday businesses. There's 4 of them. If I didn't use them, I'd lose track. Again, another checklist item is there a plan for ongoing dialogue? Don't make it just one announcement. And then, have you anticipated the top 5 concerns? And are you prepared to respond to those? So that's before you announce. Okay, during rollout, here's some items that you're going to think of. Are you communicating through multiple channels? Again, is it emails? Is it town halls? Is it through Slack or instant messaging or whatever you're using? So is there a clear place for people to ask questions? How is that coming in? And are you actually fielding those questions? So you're creating an FAQ page, right? And have you scheduled follow-ups for the touch points? So that could be an email, that could be a call. Anonymous feedback makes it really hard. I always encourage people, if you want a response, please put your name down and we will get back to you, right? And then are other leaders in the organizations equipped to have the one-on-one conversation? So if you're that second level manager, or you're that executive, everybody below you has to hear it come from one person or the same way. Because we filter information. We filter information, our brains hear what we want to hear, what's important to us, and then that's what we communicate down. It's just natural. It's human nature for us to do that. We filter information as we hear it. So I would simply, and this is what we've done for many of the organizations, sat each one of the managers down, frontline, mid-level manager, senior level manager, and ask them, okay, those questions, answer those 4 questions for me. Doesn't have to be word for word, but it needs to be an answer that is consistent. And then after rollout, what are we looking for? Are you sharing your wins and lessons learned? This is the part where after we roll it out, it's like, oh, man, we've done all this communication, we've rolled it out, we've spent all this money, and then we don't do our homework for the next time. So many things can be learned for the next time we roll something out if we just took the time to capture those lessons learned. Another checklist item, are you actively seeking feedback? So is this something that you're like, yeah, give us some feedback, and there's no way for them to give feedback? Or are you having conversations with people? Are you walking around? When you talk to somebody, it may not be the reason you're talking to them, but at the end of the conversation, especially if something is being rolled out, I always ask, hey, how's that AI implementation going? Or how's that new reorganization treating you? Do you have any concerns? Then sit back. Ask those open-ended questions, and then just sit back and listen. The other piece here is, how are you adjusting? How are you adjusting based on what you hear? So as you hear things, what are you doing to make either a change or to communicate through your different levels, because this may rise up to the point where you need to go. So here's a structure that I would encourage you to use. It's a template. You can use it for any change communication, right? The opening statement. I want to share some important changes coming to how we work. And I'm going to allow this is going to give you the full picture. Here's the why. Here's the why, what we're doing. Be honest, be specific. What's changing? Here's what will change, and here's what won't. What's the impact on you? Here's what it means for you, right? In your role specifically. What support are they going to have? Here's how we're going to support you through this. And then what's next? Here's the timeline, and here's what's going to happen next. And then invite them to have that dialogue. I want to hear from you. Here's how you can share questions, concerns, or ideas. And then the acknowledgement piece. I know this change brings uncertainty. That's normal. We're navigating this through together. Keep it simple. Don't overthink this. Harvard Business Review, their research here found that organizations with clear, frequent change communication sees a 47% higher return to stakeholders over a 5-year period compared to those with poor communication. That's almost 50% of the organization. So here's your homework. Take whatever AI initiative or any other initiative that you're currently rolling out or about to roll out and run it through the checklist I just gave you. If you can't check off every single one of those boxes, you've got some work to do before you go any further. Clarity before speed, always. All right, let's recap. We've talked about a lot. The clarity gap. The clarity gap is the number one reason that any rollout will fail. Leaders skip communication because they're moving fast, they're assuming too much, and underestimate how much people need to understand, not just know. The second thing we talked about was your team is silently asking those 4 questions. Why is this happening? What does it mean for me? Why was I considered? And what happens next? If you don't answer them, fear is going to answer for you. And last but not least, clarity requires a plan. So pre-announcement, rollout, keep the dialogue going, multiple channels, that repetition, space for pushback, and always, always, always acknowledging the emotional reality. Thank you. It was a lot, but I know that this information will help you. Here's what I want you to walk away with. You didn't lose them at the software. We lost them at the silence. So the technology is rarely ever the problem. The gap between what you know and what they know, that's the problem. And the fix, it isn't better tools, it's better communication. Clarity before efficiency every single time, because speed without understanding isn't leadership, it's chaos. If this episode hit home for you, please, here's what I want you to do. First, share this with somebody who's leading maybe a change initiative in your organization. Whether that's you, somebody else on another team, an executive, they need this framework. Second, click on that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. The next episode, we're going to dig even deeper into this theme. So I'm going to show you exactly how to talk to your team about AI without creating the panic, because words matter, and I'm going to give you the script. Drop a comment below. Tell me, what's your biggest communication miss? What have you seen as a change lately, right? What went wrong and what would you do differently? That way, we can all learn from each other in the Go Be Great community. Until next time, I believe in you. Go be great. See you on the next episode. Bye-bye.